Okay, so get this. Imagine a glass of award-winning wine that doesn't, break the bank.
Hmm.
That's South Africa's secret weapon right now, and it's why we're doing a deep dive into their wine industry.
Right.
You sent over like a fascinating mix of articles, videos, even some Wikipedia.
Yeah.
And I've got to say, this industry is full of surprises.
It really is. I mean, it's a captivating blend of like triumphs and struggles, and
Yeah.
by the end of this deep dive, you'll understand what makes South African wine so unique and why it's, creating such a buzz right now.
So to kick things off, let's kind of set the scene.
Okay.
One article mentioned that South Africa is the world's 7th largest wine producer.
Wow.
Not bad, right?
Not bad at all.
Yeah.
Especially considering the economic hurdles they face.
Right.
Imagine vineyards being replaced with apple orchards and pear trees.
Oh, wow.
That's the reality. For some struggling to stay afloat, it really sets the stage for what we'll explore. Amazing wines, but an industry facing some serious challenges.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, how did they even get here? What's the backstory?
Well, buckle up. We're going way back.
Okay.
Think 1652.
Okay.
The Dutch East India Company sets up shop at the Cape of Good Hope.
Right.
Their mission combat scurvy in sailors
With wine.
with wine.
Yeah.
Enter Jan van Riebeeck, who plants the first vineyards, and boom! Just a few years later, in 1659,
Wow.
South Africa produces its first successful wine from muscadel grapes.
So essentially wine was medicinal back then.
Exactly. It was a practical solution to a very real problem,
Right.
and it paved the way for centuries of winemaking tradition.
Wow. And speaking of tradition, just a few decades later, in 1685, Simon van der Stel establishes the legendary Constantia estate.
Yes?
Their Muscat wines were so good they were even enjoyed by European royalty.
Oh, wow.
That's saying something.
That's huge. Constantia's success put South African wine on the map, early on.
Yeah.
Then in the late 1600s, French Huguenots arrive in the Franschhoek Valley, bringing their old world knowledge with them.
Okay.
It was a fusion of influences shaping those early techniques,
Mm-hmm.
some of which, like adding sulfur to control fermentation, are still used today.
It's fascinating how those early decisions still kind of echo in modern winemaking.
Yeah.
But the path wasn't always smooth sailing, was it?
Not at all.
Huh.
Under British rule in the 19th century, South African wine boomed, especially with the British market wide open.
Okay.
But then a treaty in the 1860s changed everything. It reduced tariffs, making French wines more competitive
Oh,
and dealing a blow to South Africa.
kind of a turning point then.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And as we move into the 20th century, the plot thickens.
Okay.
The KWV, a cooperative, emerges and exerts significant control over the industry for decades. Then, of course, we have the era of apartheid, which led to international isolation
Right.
and a whole new set of challenges for South African wine.
Yeah, it sounds like a real roller coaster. Moments of success followed by major setbacks.
Yeah,
But then in 1993, with the end of apartheid, things start looking up again, right?
absolutely. The return of democracy breathed new life into the wine industry. There was a surge in international interest, but new hurdles emerged too. Economic crises, droughts,
Right.
and then a global pandemic, as we saw in those recent video interviews.
It's heartbreaking to hear about vineyards being abandoned simply because they're not profitable.
Yeah.
But amidst these struggles, there are inspiring stories too.
Like the incredible story of Carmen Stevens, the first Black woman to qualify as a winemaker in South Africa.
Yeah, her story, as detailed in that Wine Arc blog post, is incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
She faced so much discrimination, overcoming huge hurdles to establish her own winery.
It really is.
It really speaks to the industry's evolution and the push for equality.
Her success isn't just a personal triumph.
Yeah.
It signifies a potential shift in the industry.
Okay.
Carmen's focus on smaller independent wineries, emphasizing quality and unique stories,
Yeah.
offers a potential counterpoint to the economic pressures faced by larger producers.
So a beacon of hope amidst all the uncertainty.
Exactly. And her story ties into this bigger conversation about innovation and sustainability,
Right.
a theme that pops up constantly in our source material.
Okay, let's talk about that. They're doing some pretty cutting-edge stuff over there, right?
They are. We saw mentions of solar and wind mapping.
Wait, how does that work with wine?
It's fascinating. They're using this tech to collect data on sunlight and wind patterns, then using that data to choose the absolute best locations for specific grape varietals.
Oh, wow.
It's all about maximizing quality and, in a way, working with nature instead of against it.
So it's not just about trendy tech, it's about being strategic and sustainable.
Exactly. And it's paying off. South African wines are winning awards, attracting foreign investment.
Yeah.
Remember that affordable, award-winning wine we talked about?
Right.
That's becoming their calling card.
I'm also curious about those trends we saw mentioned. Things like canned wines, alternative packaging.
Uh-huh.
It seems like they're not afraid to shake things up a bit.
It's not just about being trendy.
Okay.
South Africa is embracing canned wines as a way to reach new demographics and promote sustainability. This trend reflects a broader shift in the industry towards alternative packaging and consumption methods. It's a different approach, that's for sure.
It definitely challenges the traditional image of a stuffy wine industry.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got this fascinating backdrop, a long history for major challenges, and a real drive to innovate.
Right.
But how are they actually dealing with those economic pressures we talked about?
Well, that's where things get a bit more complex, and is what we'll delve into next.
Okay, bring it on.
All right. It's a tightrope walk, that's for sure. Balancing tradition with innovation and quality, with affordability. It's not easy.
And from what I gathered from the articles, there are a lot of factors at play.
Yeah.
The economic crisis, those recurring droughts, the pandemic's lingering effects, even something called load shedding, which I have to admit I had to look up.
Yes, load shedding.
Yeah.
That's a uniquely South African challenge. Basically, it refers to rolling power outages
Okay.
due to strain on the national grid, and it can wreak havoc on wine production, impacting everything from irrigation to temperature-controlled fermentation.
So they're facing hurdles most wine regions never even have to consider.
Right.
And the video interviews we got those really highlighted just how tough things are on the ground.
Yeah.
Winemakers are making tough decisions, about which vineyards to keep, which grapes to harvest.
Right.
Even managing their workforce becomes a delicate balancing act.
Those interviews were eye-opening, weren't they?
Hmm?
It really brought to light the human cost of these economic pressures.
Absolutely. And it's not just isolated events.
Right.
The global pandemic, for example, led to those domestic alcohol bans, which
Right.
had a ripple effect throughout the entire industry.
And then you layer on geopolitical events like the war in Ukraine,
Right.
impacting input costs, things like fertilizer and fuel.
Yeah.
It's a constant game of adaptation, and unfortunately, for some downsizing.
There was this one comment that stuck with me.
Okay.
An expert called South Africa's bulk wine sadly good value right now. It hints at the tough spot they're in.
That phrase really encapsulates the dilemma. On one hand, you have incredible quality wine available at very competitive prices.
Right.
But on the other hand, those prices often don't reflect the true cost of production,
Right.
especially when you factor in fair wages for workers and sustainable practices.
Yeah.
It raises questions about long-term viability.
One of the experts in those videos also mentioned South Africa's historical top-down approach to the industry.
Yeah.
They've shown the world they can make premium wine, but gaining a foothold in those more mainstream markets seems to be the struggle.
It's a challenge many wine-producing countries face. Balancing prestige with accessibility. How do you make your mark in a crowded market while staying true to your unique identity?
Yeah.
South Africa seems to be navigating this by focusing on quality innovation and promoting those niche grape varieties that are starting to turn heads.
The articles also pointed out that the total vineyard surface area is shrinking,
Right.
with many farmers switching to other, more profitable crops. What does this mean for the long-term future of the industry?
It's a concerning trend, no doubt. But while some see it as a sign to decline, others view it as a natural correction.
Okay.
As land dedicated to less profitable grapes decreases, the focus can shift toward quality over quantity.
Okay.
Ultimately, the question is whether innovation and sustainability efforts can outweigh the economic hurdles. It's a story that's still unfolding with multiple possible endings.
It's definitely a story with many layers. We've touched on historical influences,
Yeah.
the economic realities, and the push for social transformation. It seems like the industry is trying to address all these facets simultaneously.
It's an ambitious undertaking, for sure, but the commitment to positive change is evident.
Yeah.
From initiatives like Black economic empowerment to the focus on sustainable practices.
Right.
There's a sense that South Africa is dedicated to building a more equitable and resilient wine industry.
It's about more than just economics, isn't it? It's about culture, community, and how wine brings people together.
Yeah.
One winemaker in the video talked about teaching his kids to appreciate wine even though they're too young to drink it. It's about passing on that legacy.
It speaks to a deeper meaning beyond just the beverage itself. Wine represents a cultural touchstone, a way to connect, and a source of pride for many South Africans.
One expert used this analogy of a pendulum swinging back and forth, and I thought it was quite fitting. This tension between tradition and innovation, between relying on digital marketing versus promoting those real-life experiences between producing for the masses or focusing on niche offerings.
Right.
It's all in flux, which makes it all the more intriguing.
South Africa seems to be embracing that state of flux.
Yeah.
They're not afraid to experiment, to push boundaries, and challenge those preconceived notions of what South African wine can be. It's a dynamic industry full of passionate individuals who are making their mark.
Those video interviews really highlighted that passion. Seeing these winemakers hands-on in the vineyards and cellars, explaining their processes, talking about their love for what they do, it was infectious.
It makes you want to grab a glass and join in, doesn't it? That enthusiasm makes you want to learn more, to explore the different regions and varieties, to experience South African wine firsthand.
Speaking of experiences, I loved what one expert said about engaging all the senses when it comes to wine. It's not just about taste, but also about sight, smell, touch, even sound.
He painted such a vivid picture, talking about feeling that cool sea breeze in the vineyards,
Yeah.
the texture of the soil beneath your feet, the unique sounds of fermentation.
Wow.
It adds a whole other dimension to appreciating wine.
I could practically feel that sea breeze myself. It makes you want to book a flight right now and experience it all firsthand.
That's the allure of South African wine right now.
Yeah.
It's a story of resilience, innovation, and a deep connection to the land and its people. It's an invitation to explore, discover, and taste the possibilities.
And with so many regions, varieties, and styles to explore, it truly feels like a journey that can unfold for years to come.
It's not a one-time experience, but an ongoing exploration of flavors, terroirs, and the evolving story of South African wine.
And that story is being shaped by forces both within and outside the industry.
Right.
We've talked about globalization, climate change, and even shifting consumer trends.
It's a reminder that the wine world is constantly evolving, just like everything else. And South Africa seems to be adapting and innovating at a remarkable pace.
Even experimenting with things like canned wines.
Yeah.
It shows they're willing to break with tradition and appeal to a wider audience.
It speaks to that dynamism we've been discussing. They're not afraid to try new things, to push boundaries and see what sticks.
And it seems to be working. Those international awards and the growing interest from foreign investors are a clear testament to their success.
Absolutely. South African wine is having its moment on the global stage, and it's well-deserved.
But amidst all this success, there's still that underlying tension between the premium and the mainstream.
Yeah.
How do they achieve widespread recognition while maintaining those high standards of quality?
That's a complex challenge they're actively grappling with. There are differing viewpoints on the best path forward.
Okay.
Some believe the focus should remain on those high-end award-winning wines, while others see tapping into more accessible markets as key to long-term sustainability.
It's a fascinating debate, highlighting the complexity of the wine industry as a whole. It's not just about producing a great product, it's also about marketing, distribution, and staying ahead of ever-changing consumer tastes.
It's a business, after all,
Yeah.
and a fiercely competitive one at that. But at its heart, it's still about people, passion, and a deep connection to the land.
And that connection to the land is something we haven't fully explored yet.
Right.
South Africa boasts an incredibly diverse terroir with a wide range of microclimates and soil types, all contributing to the unique character of their wines.
It's a wine lover's paradise.
Right.
From the coastal regions to those mountainous vineyards, each area has its own distinct personality reflected in the wines. It's a beautiful thing.
And they're not just relying on those traditional European grape varieties, are they?
Not at all.
Yeah.
They're embracing indigenous grapes like Pinotage, which is really starting to gain international recognition.
Pinotage, that's one I've heard of but haven't had the chance to try yet.
It's a unique grape, a bold one. Some might even call it polarizing, but it embodies that South African spirit of adventure and experimentation we've been talking about.
It sounds like a grape with a story to tell. And it's just one example of the many hidden gems waiting to be discovered in South African wine.
Exactly. It's a journey of exploration with something new to discover around every bend.
And that's what makes it so exciting. And what I love is that it's a journey that's accessible to everyone, regardless of budget or wine knowledge.
That's one of the best things about South African wine. You can find incredible value at every price point, from everyday sippers to special occasion bottles. And there's a sense of openness and inclusivity that's really refreshing.
You don't have to be a sommelier to appreciate a good South African wine. They're approachable, food-friendly, and bursting with flavor.
And that approachability is a big part of their growing popularity. People are looking for wines that are enjoyable, versatile, and don't require a dictionary to understand.
It's about stripping away the pretense and just enjoying the experience.
Precisely. And South African wine makes that incredibly easy to do.
So as we start to wrap up this deep dive, What are some key takeaways for our listener?
Well, first and foremost, South African wine is on the rise. They're crafting high-quality wines, winning international awards, and garnering recognition from both critics and consumers.
And they're doing all this while, pioneering innovation and sustainability,
Right.
embracing new technologies and practices while also respecting tradition and the environment. That's a tough balancing act to pull off.
It really is.
Yeah.
And they're simultaneously tackling social transformation, addressing past inequalities, and building a more inclusive industry for everyone. It's a story of resilience, creativity, and an undeniable passion for wine.
Definitely a story that's captured my attention. But I'm curious, with those economic pressures we talked about, are the smaller, more unique wineries at risk of being squeezed out?
It's a valid concern. Competing in a global market often pushes producers towards volume over diversity.
Right.
However, there's a growing movement towards biodynamic and sustainable farming, often championed by those smaller artisanal wineries. This focus not only allows them to produce exceptional wines, but helps them stand out in a crowded marketplace.
That makes sense. It taps into that desire so many of us have to know where our food and drink come from and how it's made.
Exactly. It allows those smaller wineries to tell
Yeah.
a story about their unique terroir, their commitment to sustainability, and their dedication to quality over quantity. It's a compelling narrative.
It sounds like connecting those smaller wineries with consumers, both locally and internationally, is key.
That's where wine tourism, online platforms, and direct-to-consumer sales become crucial.
Right.
It's about fostering relationships and building a community around these brands.
And there's something special about supporting those independent producers, isn't there? It's about more than just the wine. It's about supporting a vision, a passion, a way of life.
It resonates with people, especially today. There's a growing appreciation for authenticity and craftsmanship, and these smaller wineries embody those values.
So even with those challenges on the horizon, there's still plenty of optimism for the future of South African wine.
Without a doubt, they're resilient, innovative, and passionate about sharing their wines with the world. And the world is definitely starting to pay attention.
Well, I know I'm ready to crack open a bottle and see what all the excitement is about. After this deep dive, I'm eager to taste it all firsthand.
That's the best way to truly understand any wine region, to experience the flavors for yourself. Who knows, you might just discover your new favorite.
So there you have it, our deep dive into the world of South African wine.
A journey.
A journey through history, economics, social transformation, and of course, plenty of incredible wine.
It's a dynamic industry full of complexities and nuances, but ultimately it's a testament to the human spirit, the love of the land, and the power of a shared passion.
Well said. And to our listener, we leave you with this: what will your South African wine adventure be?